This is a Miata that we bought for just $500. And this is $7,500 of suspension upgrades to turn this old beat-up sports car into a track monster. If you're wondering why this beautiful purple Miata cost just $500, that's because it didn't always look like this. A few months ago, we bought this Miata after it had been stripped of all its paint and then abandoned for nearly a decade. And now we're building it into the coolest sports car on the internet to prove that you don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to go fast and have fun. In the last episode, we did a bunch of bodywork and had it painted in a Porsche color, ultraviolet, and it looks insane. But now it's time to make it perform as good as it looks, and that's not gonna be so easy. So let's get started. It wasn't raining 5 seconds ago, this intro would have looked better, but we gotta move it all inside now. As you just saw, we have a ton of new, nice stuff for this car, but we're not getting new everything. Some of these things, like the rear subframe, rear control arms, they may look gross to you, but I think they're reusable. But there's some work that needs to happen to them in order for them to actually be reusable, which we're gonna do first. Also, I just noticed this laughably tiny rear sway bar this car has. These are small little cars. Oh, and there's rust coming off of it. So yeah, we're gonna drop the entire rear subframe to start, disassemble it all, and then hopefully fix the stuff we're gonna reuse. This is something I've never done before, so I'm cautiously confident on it. But let's give it a shot. In order to do that, we first need to drop the exhaust, which weirdly enough goes all the way to the front with no ability to take it off. So we're gonna have to figure that out. Because this car is on the rusty side, getting the crusty old bolts removed won't be easy. To try to help, I'm soaking all of the bolts I know we need to remove with some penetrating oil. This helps remove some of the surface rust that's holding the bolts in place. The exhaust setup on this particular Miata is a bit strange and definitely modified. So it's only held on by 3 bolts at the front, which are a bit stuck, but with some brute force, they come right out. Then we can remove the hangers and drop the exhaust, which is the first step in removing the subframe. That is exhausting. Oh, what the heck? The next step is to remove this large brace, known as the PPF, or power plant frame. This brace connects the transmission and differential and acts as a backbone to the entire power delivery system in the car. It also holds the differential in place, which is attached to the subframe. So if we want to get the subframe out, we also need to remove this. The PPF is held in by a few long studs, which are screwed to it through some very strange threaded inserts. With the bolts removed, the PPF won't budge. And after a bit more research, it's because the inserts are holding it in place. It just so happens that the inserts are also very much stuck. But with a little brute force and ignorance, and of course a hammer, I can finally get them out, and then we can hopefully pry the PPF out as well. What's it stuck on? Something. It's getting stuck on this hanger, this exhaust hanger. We need to go out one side at a time, like this. Yeah. Yay!
PPF.
The PPF is out.
Wow. That took PP forever.
Now, a lot of you have been asking about the Miata and how we find such great deals on cars in general, and the answer is AutoTempest. AutoTempest is actually the best thing ever. If you've ever searched for a car to buy, you know the pain of having to go from site to site looking for what you want. It takes a ton of extra time, and you don't ever see all of the results. But with AutoTempest, you get all of the car results with a single search, which means you no longer have to jump over from every single site, and you save yourself a whole bunch of time. I've been using it forever. They are a great sponsor of this channel. I love them. Their service is incredible. If you don't use AutoTempest right now, you are literally wasting your own time, which you shouldn't do. It's super simple. Let's say you want to buy a Porsche 911. You just go over to the site, put in your criteria, Porsche 911, hit search, and now you see every single listing. And if you want to find the cheapest one, which is exactly what we did when we bought our Porsche 911, you just sort by cheapest, and you know that the top result is the cheapest in the entire country. Also, if you see any cool, interesting, weird, cheap car on AutoTempest that you think we should buy, please send us the listing. We are always looking. So go over there right now, check it out. Thank you so much to AutoTempest for sponsoring the videos, and let's get back into working on the Miata, but go check out AutoTempest. You won't regret it. With the brace removed, now we can take care of the rest of the easy stuff. The brakes and the brake lines are attached to the car, so it's easier to just remove them from the subframe and hang them somewhere else as we take the subframe out. With everything that's staying with the car removed from the subframe, we can drop it down onto a table jack and start to disconnect the suspension from the top. With that all taken care of, now we can drop the subframe down out of the car and get it ready for disassembly with a lot of penetrating oil, because this thing is super rusty.
The subframe is out of the car.
And I've soaked every bolt.
So now that means that we should wait for the bolts to get soaked fully, and then we can start to dismantle everything that's on the subframe that can come off. Basically, we're taking off.
Yes. And then we can actually clean the subframe. If you look at the top, like this is all very...
That's the test.
That's the test of all time. Everything is very solid. There's just a lot of flaky rust coming off, so we're gonna power wash it, and then we're gonna take a wire brush, clean it all off, respray paint the whole thing, and hopefully, I think this will be reusable. Removing all the suspension arms and struts from the subframe shouldn't be too difficult, and at first it doesn't seem to be. But there's one bolt that we were warned about that's apparently very difficult to remove. The lower control arm has a very long bolt that goes through its mounting point to the wheel hub. And it turns out the warnings were very, very justified. It's lifting my whole body. Is it moving?
Nuts, dude. Jesus, Larry.
It's a lot of pounds of pressure because my whole body is on this and it's moving.
Yeah, I'm like definitely deadlifting right now. I'm about to die. It is twisting it.
It is? Is that threaded? Oh God.
We need more.
We need more. We need more juice.
Oh! You're right there. Alright, now use it. Now use the gun. Little, come on. Oh! You do not need to do that. Is not how hard you need to. Now we might be able to tap it. Oh, that's still.
With the first insanely difficult bolt removed, the rest of the suspension on this side of the subframe is coming off pretty easily. And with that all removed, we can move on to the other side and see if that bolt will be any easier.
Just explode the whole car.
I'm moving it.
Is there anything neat? Oh, here, stop. I'm gonna breathe.
That would be a little easier. And now we can just...
Now we can go put our weight to the wall.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stand on that corner. I'm gonna stand on that corner. What do you go more down? So we get lower.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we are pushing this thing. I think we should use a gun now.
It turns out it wasn't. But with it removed, we can now dismantle the rest of the suspension and finally get to the more interesting part of this project. Welcome to Jackson and Will's Restoration Shop, where today we're gonna restore the subframe and miscellaneous things. We've never done this before. I feel like one of those YouTube channels that takes a shovel that's rusty and makes it a new shovel, and they took all that time, and then you just could have bought a shovel at Home Depot. That's sort
Well,
of
you
what
can't
we're
buy
doing.
this at Home Depot.
No. So, we are going to restore the subframe and control arms, and the knuckles, and all the bolts that are attached to it.
Yeah.
And all the bushings are gonna be replaced because we're making this car oh so perfect. So you're pretty much watching a restoration, which I know gets millions of views, so you better like this video and subscribe. Now on this side, we have the subframe and control arms, which will be getting the treatment from Mr. Metal Drill. That is dangerous and should also take off the rust. Now, while we're taking care of that, this is a two-step process. Follow me over here. I bought a new tool, and that is an ultrasonic cleaner. Now, if you've never seen an ultrasonic cleaner, it's pretty much a bath of acid. In our case, we're not using a very strong acid, we're using vinegar. And don't worry, internet, it's just dish detergent. And it does start, as you can see, that was clear. It starts to take the rust off the bolts. Now they need a little help because we're not using scary acid. So we're gonna use a little bit of sandpaper and a little bit of these. And then we're gonna turn the pile of rust into usable Miata subframe. At least that's the goal. We've never done something like this before, so let's get into it.
I got my mask, I got my drill.
Safety glasses.
And now, I do need safety glasses. Thank you, Jackson, for saving my eyeballs. How safe do I look right now on a scale from 1 to 10? Because I feel like a 3, but I'm gonna do it.
Now, we've never done anything like this before, but based on our research, it's a pretty time-consuming project, especially if you don't have super high-end equipment. So Will and I are going to split up to tackle the subframe and the bolts at the same time. The subframe is a bit more of a brute force ordeal. Will is just taking an aggressive wire brush attached to a drill and grinding down the subframe until all, or at least most, of the surface rust is gone. While Will keeps grinding away, I'm running all the hardware through our ultrasonic cleaner. Unfortunately, the ultrasonic cleaner we bought isn't great, and neither is my cleaning solution. So it's taking a few passes through the machine and a lot of elbow grease with a wire brush to get the bolts looking halfway decent. Now right now, you're probably wondering, why would you even bother doing all of this? Especially after the amount we spent getting all the upgraded parts for this job. But to be honest, it's pretty simple. This car cost us $500. If there are parts that we aren't upgrading, refurbishing the old ones makes way more sense than spending thousands of dollars to get the same stock part. Not only that, but if the part is salvageable, it would be a waste to just throw them out in favor of new ones. So even though it's quite a long process, we're going to do our best to save these parts. Although it's much more difficult than we anticipated. Okay, now it's not perfect, but those are some freshly rust-removed items from the subframe. Again, we're not using the strongest of chemicals here. In fact, pretty much nothing. So the fact that we can get this result from all this junk is pretty good. I'll be curious to see how these nuts turn out though. So let's do that next. Okay, this is looking absolutely disgusting, but we'll load those in. Set it to the highest setting, 480 seconds. Turn the heat on, let it run. It does some crazy stuff in there. You can try to see. It makes also a horrendous sound. But I think it works. At least it did a decent job on these. I also oiled them. Something that I have forgotten is chemistry. But when you use an acid on a metal and you leave it there, it's gonna rust. Or it's gonna get some bad corrosion on it. So you need to neutralize the acid, thank you chemistry class, with something basic. And it turns out that a lot of oils are basic. So if we put a little oil on them, they should stop them from rusting, and then we'll neutralize the acid, come back to pH, a balanced pH, and then hopefully they'll be good to go. That's my chemistry lesson of the day that I forgot about and then relearned. So thanks to my 8th grade chemistry professor, teacher, whatever you are. And now we're going to pull them out. It's very hot. Ow. They are still obviously going to look a little gross, but they've cleaned up a bit. You can hear Will going at the subframe in the background there. But they've cleaned up a little bit. We're going to now have to wire brush them and sand them. And that will help. And then we can run them through one more cycle in here. God, this water is hot and gross. So I need to make sure I don't miss any of these nuts here.
A few moments later.
Turn that old pile of rusty bolts into not perfect, but usable, less rusty bolts and nuts. That looks a million times better, and I'm honestly pretty happy with the result for my first time doing something like this.
Meanwhile,
This is very grueling, but honestly it's making a big difference. And I think the effort will be worthwhile because we're gonna stop this from rusting any further. And hopefully give this car a little bit more life and then put the new bushings in. Should drive awesome. think we should get a new diff though, Jackson. What are your thoughts?
We need something with limited slip.
Yeah, this thing has, the slip is all it can give you.
Love slip.
It's got unlimited slip, man.
We're making good progress on our rust removal, and after many long hours, the subframe is nearly ready for its first coat of paint. Before we do that though, we need to clean off all the dust and debris we created when removing the rust. And because we can't think of a better way to do it, we're using a pressure washer. With the subframe cleaned and dried, now we can start to lay down the paint.
This is the Will and Jackson paint booth, and this is how it works. Jackson holds up the thing, and I spray real nice style. Hey man, chill. Our paint booth, it keeps moving away. Yeah. I might have gone a little overboard. Needed Jackson to reload me.
While we're painting the restored suspension components, we have another major portion of this job to deal with, and that's the old crusty bushings. Rubber suspension bushings are what allow suspension components to move around without creating much noise and reducing harshness. The problem with rubber bushings though is that over time they fall apart and stop working as they should. This can cause horrible clunking and affect how a vehicle handles and drives as well. To fix that, we're going to be removing all the old crusty rubber bushings and replacing them with stiffer polyurethane bushings, which should hopefully make the car drive even better than brand new. Removing bushings is always difficult though. They're designed to fit very snug so they can't move around, which makes them a pain to extract. However, with a makeshift press, we can remove them. And even though they're putting up a fight, we're making good progress. Inserting the new poly bushings is considerably easier. They come in two pieces that you insert from either side of the hole. They're also much more of an exact fit, so they slide in much easier as well, which is nice. With all the old crappy bushings replaced and the bolt sleeves inserted, we can finally get ready to put everything back in the car. Now we're ready to put the rear subframe back together. The front's gonna be a whole lot easier because the front's actually in much better shape and we don't need to take everything out.
And we definitely didn't start doing this already and do it wrong. That didn't happen.
Yeah, it's totally not like I messed up and then had to restart. That didn't happen or nothing. So now we're gonna get this all put together. So let's do it. Now that all the rust is removed, everything should go back together much easier. And it looks like it is. We're reusing the factory control arms and wheel hubs, but replacing the rest of the suspension components. It's important that we install all of these arms correctly, because they're used in part to align the car, and if the bolts are too loose or too tight, it can cause serious issues with our suspension. Thankfully though, everything is going on smoothly, and with all the parts we're reusing back on, now we can get into the more fun part of the job, the modification. Now that the rear subframe is de-rusted, cleaned up, and put back together, we can move on to some more exciting stuff. We're of course gonna need to do similar-ish things to the front control arms, but we'll wait until we get over there. Now, when we were thinking about modifying this car, there was only one company that we wanted to get parts from, and that's Flying Miata. They make the best stuff for Miatas. Flying Miata's website, they sell only the stuff that they like. Their own parts and some other brands' parts, but they literally only pick stuff that is the best for Miatas, and they've been doing it a long time, so they know. This is one of the Flying Miata sway bars. Check it out compared to the stock original one.
God, that thing is janky, that old one.
A lot beefier. We have all new hardware and all new bolts for it. Let me pull those out. And new sway bar bushings. So truly, this will be quite good, and new end links. These are adjustable end links. So this car is actually gonna have quite a lot of adjustability that it did not have before. The sway bars are pretty easy to install. When you're replacing end links, it's always a good idea to set them to a similar length to the factory end links, and then adjust from there depending on how everything feels. With that done and everything bolted down, the subframe is almost ready to go back into the car. We're just missing one key component. The rear subframe is looking clean, and it's almost done, but it needs the final touch, and that is
Oh man.
Flying Miata coilovers. These are the VMAX, I think, Extreme Contact. I can't remember.
Nope, that's a tire.
That's a tire.
VMAX Extreme Sports.
VMAX.
Cheers.
Put the name on the screen, Will.
Yeah.
I'll hold them.
Yeah, so that's what these are.
And these are the last thing that needs to go on. And then we can start putting the front together. And then we have some really exciting stuff to put on at the end. So you're gonna wanna stick around. And after that, we'll have probably a much better Miata.
Yeah.
Actually, almost certainly a much better Miata. So to get these coilovers on, I'm hoping it's pretty easy because getting them off only took me a second. But I believe it's just a bolt, one single bolt that rolls through here.
Yeah.
So let me grab those bolts real quick. These here
You need the
bolts.
nuts too, brother.
No, they don't. They're threaded.
They're threaded?
Into the subframe.
This guy.
Yeah. It's gonna face outwards. These have adjustability and dampening, which I always do like. Not that I really could, I'm no Max Verstappen, I couldn't tell you what's gonna be better. The coilovers bolt right in very easily. And now the subframe is ready to go into the car. Just like we removed it, we're lifting it up on our table jack and then lowering the car back down onto it. We also cleaned up the subframe bolts, so those are going in perfectly. And now we can bolt in the top of the coilovers and the rear end is finished, which is super exciting. All right, the subframe is back in. Ooh, so good, and it's looking amazing. Look at this. On camera, oh my gosh, with all the new flying Miata parts, we're practically in the Mazda factory over here. We've redone everything to our best ability, and it's like brand new. So, that is step one of our suspension overhaul, and we need to start getting to steps 2 and 3. But that is a great start, and we're getting just a little bit closer to turning this Miata into a true sports car monster. Hopefully, at some point, it'll be beating some Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Porsches around track. We have a long way to go, and we're gonna need to test out this suspension first. But that is not too shabby. I'm pretty happy with how that came out. So let's get this on to step number 2. Our process for the front end of this car is gonna be very different, and that's for a good reason. In the near future, we'll be replacing the entire front subframe and all of the suspension arms in favor of another very different setup. But more on that later. So for now, we're just gonna install the upgraded coilovers and sway bar up front, which is super quick and easy. The old coilovers are held in by just a few bolts on top and a single bolt on the bottom. And then they just drop out and you can pop in the new ones, which fit perfectly because they're from Flying Miata. The sway bar is also pretty easy, and we can just unbolt and drop out the old one and slot in the new one. And with that done, the suspension is fully complete for now, which means we only have one more modification left, and it's a big one. If you were paying attention in the intro, you probably saw these beautiful wheels from Flying Miata and some sticky tires. So now I'm gonna mount said sticky tires to said beautiful wheels so we can get them onto the car. Since we did so much work to the suspension, it would be a complete waste of money to not put better wheels and tires on to maximize the grip of the new suspension. Light wheels and grippy tires make a huge difference on how cars drive, so I'm definitely looking forward to driving this car once it's all done. With all the tires mounted, we can head back to the shop and get the wheels on the car. And finally, lower it down for the first time onto the new suspension and wheels. So let's see how it all looks. And just like that, we have what feels like a totally new Miata from when we first got it. It's painted, it's sitting on sick Flying Miata wheels, it has coilovers, it has a ton of upgrades to the suspension, all new bushings, all refurbished subframe in the rear. We still have some stuff to do to the front, which I'm excited about. New sway bars, but this thing is a completely changed vehicle. I'm very excited to drive it. We're gonna be testing it in a future video, and we're gonna be adding a whole lot more things, which I keep saying. So make sure that you subscribe. Thank you so much for watching the videos. This thing is gonna be crazy.